Hey YouTube, Electric Adventures here with the next episode of Electric Adventures the Games. We're on Programming Pack 7, so these are the games I wrote back in the day. They are mostly basic games with some slight machine code enhancements. Written in the mid-80s, a lot of them. Early to mid-80s. So this is Program Pack 7. Last episode we did Lunar Rescue, which was based on the arcade game. Now the next one is called Skybase. Now this one, as I said, the games are starting to get more complicated as we're working through the packs, although there are some earlier ones mixed in to pad out the packs. And this one, I think, from memory, I spent a little bit more effort on. Still has the Unisoft moniker. We have a high score table, 1 or 2 players. I take it I just press 1. So concept of actually having 2 players. We have an intro sequence. So those of you who know arcade games will get a sense of where some of this is coming from. So it is completely written in BASIC. Oops. You have quite randomly moving enemies, but as soon as they see that they're above you, they zoom down to get you. Oops. Ooh. And we have a couple of different enemy types, intro sequences, animation on the ship with the flame at the back. We are written in BASIC though, so we are limited at how much stuff we can do and still keep the game playable, but you only get the one shot too, so you've got to make sure you don't miss, especially when you get a couple lined up like they are now. Now we have a docking maneuver just like Moon Cresta in the arcades, which was one of my favourite arcade games. And oops, we even have a mothership stage, which I just failed at. I don't think if you fail at mothership stage, you probably get knocked back to stage 1. So, in my evolution of making games, obviously it is a Moon Cresta heavily inspired game. It's not exactly the same, but it was. You also have to remember that I probably only got to play some of the arcade games a couple of times every time I went to the arcade. So this would have been based off my memory of the game at the time. Oh. But, you know, we've got slightly more interesting ship designs. A little bit more character with the intro sequences. It's quite mean in that if you don't finish a stage, obviously we have to repeat ourselves. God, that was close. I mean, you almost have to put yourself in harm's way to be able to get going. There we go. Oh, we have a crash. Alright, I'm going to run it again though. Because I want to see if I can kill that base. I think it's worthwhile having a go at killing that base. As I said, unfortunately I don't remember exactly what order I wrote some of these games in. Not necessarily the order they appear on the program packs. And I basically wrote versions of games that I liked in the arcade and wanted to play at home on my own computer. Ooh. Now we even have a graphical life counter down the bottom there. really don't like this one that's right in the bottom. Okay. Now let's get our docking done. Now let's see if I can kill this base without dying too much. Other than missiles raining down, obviously we don't seem to have a time limit. So careful taking our time, not getting too carried away. Close. Oh, crikey. So we're getting that chance to get out. Right, base is wide open. Bang! There we go. And around we go again. Now this should hopefully be level 2 and be a bit harder. Oh, and it's randomising enemies too. I've gone for the second one first this time. Ooh. Interesting, or we could be stuck on level 2 after doing a full run through. Maybe I didn't do many of those back in the day. Pretty generous with the docking too. Did that an extra life there. No, got me. So as you can see, it's quite a fun space shooter. I did love my space shooters. So when you die, it resets you back to it properly. And they do look like they're moving a bit more, so I think we do have the concept of levels in this one. And these enemies, they're not, they're not being very smart, except when they see you and start a run down like they do. So it's just using some randomness. Oops, no actual set patterns and things like that. And and for me, a little bit more better of an attempt at trying to do some sound effects. Almost got me. Seem to be getting a higher bonus now, so there is some benefit from moving through the levels. Now, 2 enemy types and actually having the base in there is probably pretty good for a game from me back in the day. Oh, God. Nice to play it out. Risking life and limb. Oh, I was lucky. Yeah, the bonuses have definitely gone up. I believe you can thrust as well. Yes, you can. Slow down. Yeah. Yeah. And because I thrusted it, slowed it down just a little bit. No, got me. Oh, there you go. We have Skybase. Not a bad little game. Alright, so I'll get set up and we'll have a look at the source code together. Okay, back. Now let's first have a look at how long it is. Probably expect this one to be reasonably long. And there'll be a bit of sprite data there as well. Yeah, we're definitely getting up there. Wow, okay, so this one's actually 93 lines long. And it's probably a lot to do with the large number of sprite shapes. I mean, for each of the enemies in the first two screens, you have two sprites, and they're both large ones. For the two animated sequences, you have the main ship, you have, and the other part of the main ship, you have the flame, plus you have the single bullets, the double bullets, and then of course you have the parts of the mothership, of which I believe the generator type parts would have been sprites and the rest drawn. So let's list the start. I will move through this fairly quickly. For those not following through on the series, they are very similar. So line 10 is all our setup, setting our colour, our screen mode, making all the variables inch, which makes everything faster, defining our random function, seeding that with time, and opening our handle to the screen so we can put text on there. Line 20, set a different colour, clear the screen. We define that Z is single precision. We did declare a couple of arrays, and that's probably our high score table. We store our data point. Line 30, we draw our title. I won't go into detail of that, but there is an on interval. So basically, I would say that flips between showing the high score table and showing the front screen. Line 40 loads in all of our sprite shapes, and at the very end there pads out our high score table. Okay, line 50, we clear all the sprites off the screen, and we also randomly set some points on the screen. That's our star background, so random position, random colour, and then we put our high score table up there. Line 60, we put our press 1 or 2 players, and then line 70, we wait for a little while. So we're actually doing a counter and a thing, we're looking for the key 1 or 2 to be pressed and going around in a circle. And then if they have pressed something, we go to 220 and probably start the game. Otherwise, we go to 80, we clear the screen again, and we put some random stars on there, and we put some sprites on the screen. It's probably the point table. What we might do when we finish this, we might run it again and just see what. Obviously, it's one of the first ones where it actually had the proper attract screens from the arcade, where it flipped through a couple of screens. So we're putting a number of sprites on screens, so it'll be interesting to see what they look like. And that's got the press 1 or 2 players on it as well, and we're looking for the keys and then continuing. And actually it looks like we're animating a few things there, so once again it'll be interesting to see what we do on that screen. 110, yeah, there's a sequence happening here, so I'd say we're going to be able to watch a couple of things happen on that screen. Something's moving up the screen, and when it does, we clear it. Yeah, so something will fly up the screen, and then when it gets there, it clears. Then we're going to put 8 different sprites in random positions, and they're going to move around. So I'd say we actually have an attract screen where we have the enemy moving around on the attract screen. So it's actually quite good, and we use the on B, so on the value in B we go to a different line number, and that's a quick way of going to a different direction calculation based on a value, and that's depending on so that said the loop for b equals 1 to 8, so we're actually going through all of those 8 directions there. So this is the last of the attract scene sequence, and then there's a slight pause, and then we go back to 50 and start again, which would go back to the first screen. So there are 2 attract screens. So our game proper, so this is why this is a lot bigger listing, is we've spent 21 lines setting the game up and doing an attract screen. So it shows you how much work a simple thing as an attract screen can take sometimes. Now we're into the game proper. Oh, that only just fit. So we clear the screen, we go and clear all our sprites off the screen, and at the same time we set our star background. So then we set our high score table values, I think, for 1 to n. I didn't see where we set n. And then we player 1. Yeah, okay, so we put the titles up the top. Line 230, we call it a subroutine. That's probably putting the actual score and the number of lives and everything up the top of the screen. And we also print the highest high score. Line 240, we set a couple of variables, another subroutine. The 490 again, so we're going to have to have a look at that one. We put the cursor in a particular position, set the colour and press player 1 start. So that's the player 1 start in the middle of the playfield. We pause for a little bit, then we rub that out, then we play a sound, we put the sprite onto the screen. So this next sequence will be the big ship coming up and leaving our player and going back down again. So line 250 is the first part of that sequence. So this is all just coded up, nothing else can happen while this is going on. And we go and move all those parts up the screen. So you've got the flame, you've got the large ship and the upper ship. So that's why there's 3 V-pokes there. Then we get rid of, and then we put a specific position, and then we do another loop from where we're getting larger, and that'll be the ship falling down. So the one we get rid of there would be the flame. Pardon me. So we put the bottom of the ship, that slowly falls down. We've got a little pause in there, and at the end we get rid of both the flame and the mothership, because now we're going to make the little ship fall down to the bottom on the next line. Sorry, I should have got myself a glass of water. Right, next we make the little ship fall down, so we're only moving one object at the moment with a small delay in the middle, and then when we get down to the bottom we put our main sprite down the bottom and probably the flame below him. Line 270 we restore to a particular data point, and I'd say that's to place the enemies in their starting positions, and we go and read in those X and Y values, which are our starting, or maybe that's where we want the sprites to fly into. We put sprite 1 and 3 in particular positions in our X position, which is probably our spaceship. Line 280 for each of the 4 enemy. We make them fly in, I'd say. So there we're playing a particular sound, we're increasing the X by a particular step value that's in the C array, and we're using the full put sprite command to move each one of those, but we're only moving one at once and it's completely controllable, nothing else is happening at the time. So that pretty much does the fly in part of the 4 attacking ships. Right, so line 290, we're doing some more animation. So round 4 times, we get the Y value. Okay, so this would be probably the random directional movement of the ships. And because you can see a random function, that's a very long line, that line 290. It's probably at the most you could actually fit on a line. Sorry, that's very hard to read. Line 300, we're adjusting the X value. Line 330 uses a function called ABS, which is the absolute value. So you just subtract 2 values. You don't have to worry about what order they are in, and it will get you whether it's negative or positive. It'll give you a positive number, and we're just seeing whether that's within 16. And that's probably to control, rather than just move once. They can move out from a particular starting position, then back again. Let's see what we've got next. So there really is a lot of complicated going on. So line 330 is probably putting almost, it's very early in the sprite table, so that possibly is putting the, yes, that's putting our actual spaceship on the screen. And I've got a little calculation there of whether or not to show the flame. So the flame's always positioned below the ship, but it's probably changing the colour of it from transparent to red to actually show it. And in the end of a loop 340, then we actually get our stick direction and we move our ship left or right depending on whether we have pressed in those directions. Line 350 is looking for a trigger press and whether we're not already firing a bullet, and if not, then we put the bullet on the screen, set its wire position and play a zap sound. Line 360 is if the bullet is actually on the screen, then we're moving it up the screen, and quite at a fast rate. It's moving up 14 pixels at a time. And we're checking that it hasn't got to the top. If it's got to the top, we rub it out and set our bullet flag back so we can fire another one. Otherwise, we just put it on the screen, we get our X position, and then we check to see whether it's hit any of the 4 enemy sprites. So that's what our 4 A equals 1 to 4 going through the enemy sprites. We're using VPeak just to get one coordinate at a time, which should be reasonably fast. 4 basic anyway. Line 370 is obviously the end of this part of the loop, so go back to 290 and probably in the collision detection of the bullet moving, if it's detected it's finished, the last enemy will jump to the next level. So line 380 is ever our next section of code. So we draw a line with a box and a circle. I would say this is our boss. Another line and a box, put some 1, 2, 3, 4 sprites, and remember they were 2 colours, so there were actually 2 sprite patterns put over top of each other to get our generators. Line 390, we're probably having our ship fly into the screen, because remember we've got our 2-part ship fly into the screen. Line 400 is probably our random function to actually start the bombs falling down. Oops, that didn't work. Ooh, we went off the top of the screen a little bit, but that's basically, that looks like we are rubbing out one line, so that's when we hit the base, we're rubbing it out a little bit. Line 420, rubbing out a whole lot of sprites, so that's probably clearing it and going to 520 to actually run. Once again, it's a bit hard to tell. I think 430 was the first of our one of our subroutines. I'm just thinking. Oh, it's the end of that next, actually. Next, no, it's the end of another next. My goodness, this code is a bit more complicated than previously, so I'm not sure which next thing, a for loop that belongs to, but there we're detecting our stick direction, moving the ship left and right. Line 440 we see whether we can fire, we do our zap sound. If we're not firing, not moving the fire, we jump back to 400. That is a loop there, probably on the boss screen. Otherwise we move our bullet up slightly slower than on previous screens, and we put that on the screen at its current position, and then do a bit of hit detection to see whether we've actually hit anything. And another huge line there, line 460. Rubs out a whole lot of sprites, and then draws a whole lot of lines. I'd say that's when we kill the boss. That's drawing that box that fills up with lines. Line 470 is probably making a ship fly off. Playing a sound, adding a big bonus to our score, displaying that, and then go to 240 resets us back to level 1, and probably forgetting to reset the actual stage. No, well, let's reset stage equals 1 there, so that bug of us getting the wrong ship type after we went round must be from something else. Line 480, so this would be a subroutine. I haven't seen the value P before, or we probably missed it. We draw a box of one line, we print the current score. This looks like it's printing the high score table, I think. It's also playing some music as well. Lives equals lives. It's increasing our lives. So it's seeing printing the score. P might be which stage we're on, whether we're on the boss or not, I reckon. And if we've scored enough points and it's over the next multiplier, then it gives us an extra life. Line 490 rubs out 3 sprites, looking to see whether we've run out of lives. Our P is player, whether we're player 1 or 2. We didn't actually try out the 2-player option. There. And yeah, this display that displays the lives on the screen too, line 490. Let's see what's next. Line 500, another routine to display the score, I would say. And if our lives have gone over a particular thing, we play the extra live thing again. And line 510 is another subroutine. It's setting the position of something based on its current position. That's probably my standard thing to make something fly up, make the main ship fly up the screen. Line 520 is another subroutine. It clears a sprite, probably sets the colour of another one, has a delay, then it has a loop from 1 to 5, setting X coordinates to a standard position, and then clears another sprite, and then 1 to 7, and inside that 1 to 5 goes and moves some stuff around. So this is probably the random movement of the ships in the normal stage. So the jump table there, and when that's finished we put sprite. So 20 plus the 1, so they must be the enemy sprite starting from 20. With some random variation using our random function there. And we're resetting stages and everything like that. So that's like, that's our game over screen. There we go. So this must be game over subroutine. Line 590 for A equals 0 to 31, rub out all the sprites. We're checking whether we've run out of lives, and which player we are, and updating things accordingly. So yeah, quite complicated code. 600, another subroutine. We clear a sprite and we increase our score, so that's probably when we've killed one of the enemy. We're passing A, and that's the enemy that was killed. And probably there's code there to put it back on the screen again if you haven't killed enough enemies yet on that stage. Ooh, more big lines. I certainly crammed a lot of code. So this is probably the biggest game I have shown you so far in this series. And look, I'm actually going to leave it there and leave it to everybody's investigations, because I'm almost up to the sprite table. But this is a very, very long listing, and it's very hard with it compressed this much. Maybe at some stage, one of the other guys on the MSX group has shared a tool that will actually decompress basic code like this and change it so that every command is on a single line. I may look at doing that and then adding it as like a document on my website, which will show, help people out to show what is actually happening and the logic that's happening in the particular game. So the full download of this game for MSX will be available on my website. I'll put a link down below to that. Also, I think I mentioned this before, I actually have a book on programming the Spectravideo and MSX machines. There'll be a link down below for that as well. So feel free, download the game, play with it, make changes, make improvements, and I hope it helps you on your coding journey. And as I said, I promise, let's have a look. We'll run the game one more time. I want to see what the opening sequence does. So obviously we have that while we're loading our sprites, and we display our high score table. So if we wait a little bit, Let's see if we get a change. Oh, there we go. And we have an animated title screen. It's not doing a lot. Oh, but we actually have a full sequence. That's pretty cool for me back in the day. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, so it was where I was starting to, add that little bit more to the games to, to make them more like the arcade games that I loved. And a program sequence like that is, would have taken quite a while to work out in the particular ways that I did it back in the day. So, all right. I hope you guys are enjoying this series. I most certainly like revisiting my old games. I'm Electric Adventures. Thanks to all my subscribers. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.